Um, but we'll see what happens. I feel really weird doing like a weird introduction, but it's all good.
Okay.
Because what I'll, yeah. So
I don't think you should cut that out. I think it's gold.
Me too. Let's do it. So,
Yeah.
Kia ora, George.
Candid.
Great to thank you for joining us. Great to have you hanging out with me this evening or this morning at the NDF AGM. And I think you're a long-time member of the NDF community and family. I was just going through my notes. So 2008, you first presented. We had you back 2015, and so it seems really awesome and fitting to have you back here now for the 2021 AGM.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
I guess that there's some members of our community may not be familiar with your work, so I just thought before we jump in to some of the questions I've got about your current work, maybe just for the benefit of some of our members, brief. Who are you, George? Why am I talking to you? And what led you to today?
Well, I can't answer the "why are you talking to me" question. That's strictly in your corner. But yeah, so thanks. I'm really happy to be back. I'm sad that I can't be in NZ, but that's okay. So yeah, I'm George. I'm based here in London, in the UK, where the weather's just turned. It's now autumn and getting dark at 4:30 and 10 degrees. So that's a real sobering moment in every English person's life. But I'm Australian, actually. But yeah, so my background is in design, software design, mostly kind of interaction and product thinking. But I've ingratiated myself into the glam sector over about the last, 10 years maybe, doing various types of work around interface design on big collection catalogs. I've done a product company called Museum in a Box, which is really cool. But yeah, just generally in the zone of museums, libraries, archives, because I really like humans and what we do. And I like software, and I'm just trying to blend those two worlds together.
Awesome. I think that the first project I ever saw that you'd done was it was a poster, and it said who's in the library, and it was just mostly old white guys. Was that
yeah,
was that the Wellcome Trust? Was that the
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we had a really good month of residency working at the Wellcome Library. Just a small crew, and basically they just got us to do experiments week on week, which was fantastic. And there was a moment in the project where we were able to connect their people entities into, I believe it was VIAF-IDs, which let us kind of pull down images like portraits of all the people. So suddenly we just made this page that showed portraits of all the authors who were kept in the Wellcome Library. And what do you know? They're all old white guys with big hair, and you're just like, oh, again?
Far out. And so recently you've, so the first time I think you came to NDF 2008, you were working with Flickr Commons. Then 2015, it was Good Form and Spectacle. And you're going to remember the weird takeaway that I had was the tennis ball next to an object. And just kind of working on collections online myself was just like, how is that such a simple but crazy idea? And I loved it. And now you're back at working with Flickr on their latest venture. So I guess I'm really intrigued. What did they do to tempt you back? How has that move happened?
Yeah, it's crazy, crazy good. So at the end of 2008, I was actually laid off by Yahoo, which really sucked because I was having a lot of fun doing Flickr Commons, and it was going really well. So I wasn't expecting to go back to Flickr until I got an email from Ben McCaskill, who's the COO and president of Flickr now. He's part of the SmugMug family of McCaskills, who acquired Flickr from Yahoo in 2018. And basically, SmugMug from what I can gather, is a kind of a small family-owned company. I mean, it's big, but it's small as well. But they haven't taken VC, and it's just they just kind of doing the right thing.
Nice.
And they're quite sort of conservative financially and stuff like that. And they're not getting too big too fast. Anyway, Ben sent me a lovely email last year saying, if you hate Flickr, stop reading. But if you still like Flickr, I've got a question. So, I don't hate Flickr. So of course I kept reading. And yeah, he was basically sort of saying, we really like the Flickr Commons program. And, we've been sort of doing the work over the last couple of years to kind of tear the Yahoo guts out of the Flickr code base. This Flickr Commons thing is somehow it's still survived over the last sort of 13 years, even without any attention. And we want to try to figure it out. We want to try and breathe some life back into it. Would you help us figure that out? And I was like, yes. Yes, I would love to do that. So yeah, I'm excited because it's a new chance to work on a really hard problem, which is, well, I'm sure we're going to talk about what a hard problem we find ourselves with, but yeah, it's great to be back. Like I said, Flickr is amazing, and I'm happy to get the chance to return to a thing that I've done before, which I don't think many of us necessarily take.
And just, I guess, again, just joining the dots there, so you were originally involved in the creation of Flickr Commons, is that so? That was
yes, absolutely, yeah, that was thanks to another email. It turns out emails are quite powerful, from Michelle Springer at the Library of Congress, who wrote to Flickr in 2007. And the story was that the Library of Congress was looking for a Web 2.0 partner, because they'd had a million photographs open license on loc.gov for like 10 years, but that just weren't getting much audience, so they're looking for a platform to share the photographs with where people already were. And we've all heard that story now. It's not build it, they will come, it's take it to where they are. And so when I was chatting with the Library of Congress back then, their kind of handling of this concept of no known copyright restrictions was just very simple. And I thought, there's lots of institutions that have, especially photographic holdings in their buildings that they're not quite sure of the provenance of. So, but they're pretty sure, for example, it was photographed before 1900. Therefore, they, with some authority, they can say, we're pretty sure that this is okay to share. So that no known copyright restrictions became a nice kind of release valve for people who were pretty sure, but not 100% sure. And the Commons was born.
And so it then had this, I think you just said 13 years, where it kind of abandoned. Is that is that too extreme, or was it there a skeleton staff, or were people
yeah, I think abandoned isn't quite the right word, just because there were several members of the team over those years who did try to look after things as best they could, but the real problem was that just the corporations that owned Flickr didn't know what to do with this strange free for the good of humanity kind of thing.
Doesn't make sense,
because they're just exactly, it doesn't make any corporate sense. So it languished, I would say, maybe is a different word to use than abandoned, because and actually I must also give credit to Michelle at the Library of Congress, who did a lot of the straightforward community management work with the other Commons members. She became the person who people would ask for help, which is not good, but if she wasn't there, it might have died. So thanks, Michelle.
And so we've acknowledging then that period of languish, and sort of, I guess, what's different now? What is SmugMug? And it's changed corporate hands a couple of times. What's different about this change? And I guess why should we as a sector care about this new venture? What's different? What should we buy into for this?
Wow. Whoa. I don't have my salesperson hat with me.
Sorry.
No. What's different and why should you care? Well, I mean, I think the fact that the company has invested in me for 6 months now to do, 6 months worth of user research and strategy around how to revitalize the Flickr Commons is non-trivial. This is, it's an actual investment. And they wanted me to take the time to really think it through properly and not just sort of say, so it's not a flash in the pan. So, over the summer, I was actually in Australia with family, and I did a whole bunch of user research talking to not only Commons members who are still involved or may have drifted away actually, but also a whole bunch of other people in the sector or internationally, just about trying to get a handle on what's changed in the last decade over just in the practice of the sector, but also what hasn't changed. Because I think, digital can be so bright and sparkly and, attractive, but actually a lot of the kind of more systemic issues with things like, genuine community exchange, for example, are still really difficult. And, I think that's one of the things that Flickr does very well is genuine exchange and actual conversation around digital objects. So that's one thing that I think is a real strength of that place. And also, it's sort of consumer grade software that's been used by millions of people for 18 years now, which is also, that's a big deal. It's not sort of a new thing that's being tried out of a university with no designers or whatever. It's a robust sort of, it's survived a generation of people, and there's billions and billions of things on it. So it's sort of, it's a brain the size of a planet, Adam.
Awesome. I mean, that's, like I say, I think just they say just putting that, from that period, as you sort of said earlier, it's just like, what do we do with this? At least then to sit and go, well, this is what we should do with it. We are sitting with this amazing resource, and I think lots of other people I think would be terrified by that. And so thank goodness you read past that first line is kind of where I'm going with that. And so
I imagine it a bit like what if I hadn't been laid off in 2008?
Yeah.
And in 2009, I wonder what would have happened. The size of the program. There's I mean, I say only, but there's only 114 member institutions in the Commons, and about 50% of those are how we've defined active. So they're logging in and uploading stuff. But it could be 2,000, right? And I guess you could say, it's just another aggregator, but that's when I would fall back on the tool set and the usability and the robustness of it. It's not just an aggregator, because people are there and they're talking with each other.
And I think of the connections that we have sort of with the data that we have in there with the Biodiversity Heritage Library and Wikipedia, and just being part of that network. It is really it's one of the essential centers of aggregation that so many things kind of link off. And it's actually amazing now, we're talking about it, that for 13 years it has had volunteer and a few dedicated individuals kind of helping it. That's actually, I hadn't thought about that. That's amazing.
Yeah it's there's a heartbeat, but it's weak, and it just needs some food and some company and a bit of attention, a bit of love.
All right. And so they've created is it proposed or creating the Flickr Foundation? Is that
well, yes. I mean, that came out of my work over the summer, actually. And to be frank, it's an idea that I've been dreaming about for some time. When my ship was going down back when, I was worried because, I was worried about this corpus and it being destroyed and that not being okay. That's bordering on immoral, so it was actually very exciting that I had a chance to kind of reinvigorate that idea too. And, yeah, so anyway, part of what I proposed to Ben and the guys at Flickr was to do actual robust, resolute, long-term thinking about what it would actually mean to stop Flickr from being deleted. And, you know, this might take decades of effort and brains and money to do.
Yeah.
And that means that kind of work falls outside the corporate context, I think, you know. And it's, I mean, it's not a new thing for a company to create a non-profit that runs alongside it. Often they're used as giant tax dodgers. I won't name names here, but you know what I mean. That pattern's not new. But I'm interested in what a foundation might be able to do alongside Flickr as more of a kind of be able to help it sort of critique itself and design strategies that can help with, you know, I don't know, content mobility, for example, or you know, just to think in the long term in a way that a corporation finds it really hard to do.
I think so. I mean, and thinking of that, so one of the things having a read is that I guess that really excited me, and when we were thinking about this conversation is that long-term thinking that the foundation can bring, and the 100-year strategy is being proposed for the Flickr Foundation. And I mean, I love doing that big thinking, and I love but it's so often in the 12-month kind of either financial, like that's where the money's at, or we often maybe 3 to 5, maybe 10, because that's you can kind of imagine it, but it's just out of reach, and so you get to do something slightly big. 100 years, that's
it's bonkers.
Death. It's like, so how is, I mean, is the purpose in doing that because actually you get to remove yourself a little bit, because you can think without limitations. You can, when you're thinking 100 years, you don't have to worry about like tomorrow. You can think about reinventing processes and systems and all sorts, because you're thinking so big. What was the reasoning for going for something so sort of, it's a great number?
Well, it is a nice big round number. But no, I think you're right on the money there, Adam, with the sort of we're all just restrained by Q4 and, you know, 3-year strategies and stuff, because it only lets you see right in front of your face, and that's just an unsatisfying way to work, especially for memory institutions. I mean, come on. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to propose here is that Flickr is actually a bit like an institution. You know, and part of my research was, how is Flickr different from a museum, and how is Flickr different from an archive? And actually, if you look at pretty standard definitions, it's not that different. But anyway, the 100 years, I think 100 years lets you have a big direction that you, and a big North Star. And, you know, the North Star in this case would be, don't let Flickr get deleted. You know,
solid mission,
which is, I mean, you know, it's surprisingly unclear that you know, is a direction today. But that's another credit to the Smug Mug guys. You know, they want it to last for decades, and they've stated that publicly, and, you know, they're interested in long-term thinking, and, you know, it's not a sell to them, you know. But yeah, so 100 years, I think, lets you set and adjust a big direction, but also lets you have sort of more contemporary strategies to, you know, meet that big direction. And then the day-to-day becomes about tactics that can let you keep on track, you know. And I don't know, maybe, at least in my mind, that helps you, like you say, remove questions that might get in the way. Like I had one question as we were doing a lot of the kind of, we did a lot of sharing around the process of doing the research. And one question that came back was, what's a JPEG going to be in 100 years? And I was like, I have no idea. Well, none of us do. So we can just kind of, you know, maybe we can treat that as a tactic, you know, like at some point we'll need to migrate to a new format or something, but we don't know when that's going to be. So we can't really, you know, you might be able to plan for that in a 3-year strategy, for example, but you can't do that if you're sort of saying, actually we want this to live until 21, which is just really fun to say, you know.
That's I love it, and I think you touched on this as memory organizations. Surely that's what we should be thinking, because the reason we're here is to be here forever, and to hold these stories and to share these stories, and so to be thinking about what not just the person after me, but 10 people after me, 20 people is going to be having to think about in what direction that's it's just really exciting, and I kind of I'm jealous of that you get to do the process.
Don't be jealous.
I'll just come up with my own.
You can do it too.
That's it. And I guess again, really silly, but how do you start that? Like, I mean, because that's the flip side of it, is that's terrifying. Like, that is like, it's that's, and so are you breaking?
Do I look terrified?
Nah. Again, maybe just hiding it really well. Have you broken it into chunks, or are you've got that mission, and as you say, it's dealing with tactics, or are you going to chunk it up? What's day one? I assumed was just lots of post-it notes and pens.
A bit of design thinking. Yeah. I mean, the short answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
But you know, if you know you're going on a long journey, and we're literally lifting up our foot to make the first single step, like the 501c3, which the foundation hasn't been formed yet.
Okay.
We're working on it, and you know, hopefully it'll be by the end of the year-ish. You know, but what I guess one thing that I'm pretty clear on is that I shouldn't be doing this by myself, and this is a really fresh opportunity to bring in minds to the problem who wouldn't traditionally be there.
Yeah.
You know, like it would be, I don't want to say easy, but it would be straightforward for me to bring in the old guard, you know, get a bunch of old white guys on the board, you know, do that kind of thing. But the society is just so excited and exciting right now about doing things differently, having different people around the table, you know, new voices, fresh voices, that I want to get involved in that and bring people into the group who just don't think the way I do. So I would do that like I've done any community building in the past, which is slowly. You know, I don't just want to have a board of directors tomorrow, no matter how rich they are. I mean, although but you know, so to answer your question, we do have short-term needs, which is, you know, create the organization, get a bit of startup money, and we're looking for a founder donor right now to the tune of about 50K. So hopefully we can find that person. And then, you know, we'll need year on year money to be able to spend on people. But I guess the sort of to keep the direction fresh, we'll need to structure an endowment of some kind, because you need an endowment to have an organization that can last that long without market forces getting in the way. So they're the sort of financial timeframes that we're thinking about, like a bit of startup money. Then we can start to, you know, find partners to work on with grants and stuff like that, and then work on the endowment over the next, I mean, I suspect you could work on the endowment until forever, but it would be nice to kind of establish that as part of what the foundation needs and does.
All right, that's because one of my questions I think that I forwarded you, which is like, this amazing idea, who's footing the bill? Like, this is a 100-year project.
I know. I mean, it's not. That was also a question that I was asking in the research, is like, how are you feeling about money right now? And one of the ideas that we had to just generate a bit of revenue actually for the Commons members, sort of non-tainted revenue, was to create a little museum shop, like the best little museum shop, which is, you know, when you go to the exhibition and you really want that postcard of that thing you just saw and it's never there. It's like, well, I think it would be really easy and nice to have a best little museum shop at Flickr Commons that was opt in. People could curate their favorite 10 things from their collections, sell them as a set, or whatever, however that works. Nice. And Smugmug have already said they don't need any of the markup, so the institutions can charge whatever they want. So that's just a small commercial idea that we could hopefully in a non-threatening way apply to the Commons program. And that's not about making money for Flickr, that's about making money for the institutions if they're comfortable with it. Actually, a funny story there. One of the institutions that I talked with was the archive of a congregation of nuns in Canada. And I was like, oh, so, how would you feel? How would you feel about having a museum shop? Would that be of interest? And Mary was like, well, the nuns have taken a vow of poverty. So, they're not that interested in becoming rich. And I'm just like, oh, yeah, okay. Vow of poverty, fine.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. But then she very sweetly followed up with, well, they might enjoy a few postcards in the tuck shop so they can give each other birthday cards.
Nice. That's amazing.
Yeah, they've got all these awesome photographs of like nuns, in the world.
Are those the photos you've used in some of the documents?
Don't know. Maybe.
Mary, there's a couple. Well, there's a couple.
Mary Costa. Yeah. There's one with like a nun with kind of 50s sunnies, and she's standing like this, and she's got a boa constrictor wrapped around her.
I noticed within the document there was photos of nuns.
Yeah.
And I think just sort of looping slightly back is, I think that's the other really exciting thing you have, I guess, with it, setting up a foundation, thinking about 100 years is that governance and that organizational structure, and how do you build that with 100 years in mind. And excited to hear that it's not just going to be, well, we'll just follow the model that's been used over here for the last 100 years, because that's gone really. No. And so is that, I know you don't know what that's going to look like, but is those types of things you're thinking of building from the ground up and trying something different and not rushing into? You're feeling.
Yeah. There are some good things about the way we do stuff now, which we shouldn't just throw away. It's the baby out with the bathwater kind of stuff. So for example, I think there should be a focus on transitions. Like in 100 years, there'll probably be, let's just guess, I don't know, 10 CEOs of Flickr, if the corporation survives. Yeah. So what should happen when one CEO comes and goes? How do we make sure that they don't just say, "What's this for?" So that's a really, I don't know how to encode that in some kind of something carved in marble, but that's kind of what we have to do. And it's also trying to go against that grain of belief that companies will just survive, because I think we've seen very obviously that's just not the case, especially in digital land. And just by acknowledging that and saying, the Flickr ship might go down, so what the hell does that mean for the 50 billion images that are in that thing? Like GeoCities, what the hell happened there? Like Yahoo Photos, all these big pieces of our history that just happen to be digital have been deleted. It's like blowing up Palmyra. It's not quite like blowing up Palmyra, but it's kind of it's in the same ballpark. It's not iconoclastic exactly like that was this, but
I think thinking, I was trying to think back to companies that had been around 100 years ago within New Zealand and kind of watch change. How many, just thinking how many I can think of versus how many have existed and gone. And that's that bit. I guess that's the terrifying bit. What's the to that point, what happens if someone else buys it and decides that actually this isn't. I really like the idea of you talking about it as a museum and an archive. I think that's a really interesting concept of what is it doesn't have to be a building on a hill. What does a museum of the future look like? And I love the idea of thinking, if we were to redesign museums now, archives now, what would they look like, and what would they? And I think that's the sort of situation you may find yourself in, is what does it may not be a building with with cases, and that's a really exciting thing to think about. I realized I thought I was like, man, I've got loads of questions. I was like, this is half an hour, and I'm like, damn.
We're out of time already.
Yeah, it's like which is insane.
I've got so much to say.
That's it. Well, maybe what we'll do is, because I've got a couple more, and
just bring me to New Zealand. Bring me to New Zealand.
That's it. We'll get our board.
I'll come to every AGM from now until like 100 until I die
to help us get our quorum. What's the I guess what's next for you? So obviously you're going for that. Is it the 5? I'm not sure what that is, but I'm assuming it's 501 is a.
Oh, it's a public charity, a type of public charity. It's going to be registered in California because that's where the heart of the company is. I'll stay in London, which is also a kind of good place to be, I think, for this foundation thinking and wrangling, because I'll be Europe correspondent, you know. But yeah, what's next? Well, it just so happens I've written a strategy, Adam, which covers the next 2 years, which you can find online at flickr.org. So if you're interested in the kind of, you know, we've got ideas around stuff we should just do to help the Flickr Commons, you know, get food. And that's, you know, I hope what will be fairly straightforward work to like make the interface 1 million times better, just make it easier for new people to join, stuff like that. Then there's a category of work called alpha work, and the best little museum shop falls into that. That's like, it's new stuff, new ideas that have come up from the research. But yeah, please, all my works are online at flickr.org. So if you want to go read it, please do.
Will there be a launch? Are we so next year? Is that going to be like the Flickr Foundation kind of? It's official. Is that?
Yeah. I'm not very good at that sort of pomp stuff. Like as far as I'm concerned, it's launched, even though we don't quite have a 501c3. But I know I'm getting that around the wrong way. Yeah, we should have a party because it's worth celebrating. I'm not quite sure when that'll be. Maybe after Christmas. Don't know. But yeah, we can have a Zoom of 1,000 claps or something. I don't know. Yeah.
And what can we do? So as the Indian community, as the New Zealand, there's the sector here. What can we do to help, to join in? I guess the first thing, if anyone's got 100, would be you needed 50. So what, 100 New Zealand dollars, 100,000 for that first.
Oh yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah, if there's a wealthy individual who enjoys photography and posterity on the call, please get in touch.
Otherwise, we'll run a sausage sizzle at Bunnings or something for you.
I mean, I would come for that because I freaking love a sausage sizzle at Bunnings. What can you do? Well, if you work in an organization that has an awesome photography collection and you would consider sharing even just 50 photographs or, you know, a small amount, because a small amount's actually better than a big amount, I think, at this stage. It would be good to register your interest at least. I don't think we'll be launching a new blob of members probably till the new year, but it would be really nice to be able to launch with, I don't know, 10 new orgs who are joining in the fun. So that's one thing you could do today is go to flickr.com/commons, and down the bottom of the page there's quite a well hidden link to register your interest. So please do that. That would be great, because then won't forget and I'll make sure to reach out for you and say hi.
Awesome. Now that is something I think we can, we'll definitely be doing. I'll be pestering the team to get involved. I'm just, as I say, I'm just, I huge respect to the work that you do and that you have been doing, and this next chapter, I'm super jealous, and so I'm excited to see what happens. And
thanks, Adam. Thank you.
To the next NDF where we can get.
Okay, when would that be? That would be. Well, if we keep the same kind of cycle, 2025, 26.
That's it. So we can hear about what's happened. But thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.